This is the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Regardless, the report is now here. It has dropped, and it might not have produced everything of what some Republicans hoped for. It is, regardless, devastating to the FBI, and to a degree, it does exonerate Donald Trump.
So that was stunning. It was 14 seconds, but to see somebody on CNN admit that the FBI absolutely ran an unnecessary campaign that cost millions and really put incredible speed bumps and destroyed lives of the previous administration. And I'm talking about the Trump administration. And to a degree, he said exonerates the president. It backs up a lot of what he was saying. Now, along the way, removed, but hearing about it all the time, was Ambassador Nikki Haley. She was here in New York, but she had a very direct line to Trump. In fact, there was no intermediary. That was one of the preconditions of her taking the job. She is running for president of the United States, but first she wants the GOP nomination. Ambassador, I'll ask you instead of governor. Great to see you again.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
How much did this whole Trump probe affect you trying to form relations with Russia and other nations?
Every day. Every day this was an issue. Every day we were hearing it domestically. Every day when I deal with other ambassadors, they were asking me questions about it.
Is he going to get impeached? Should I even deal with you?
Oh, and what's going to happen? How, is there truth to this? They were skeptical of what was going on. It was just constantly an issue. And Brian, this is a scandal. The idea that we would have our top law enforcement agency, one, not follow the law, but two, show that they're politically motivated. This is what you see in third world countries. This is corruption that I fought at the United Nations. And so to have it happen now, every person that had their hand in this needs to be fired, and every one of their senior managers needs to be fired. We've lost all in any sort of trust with the FBI now. They've got a lot of work to do to get this fixed.
I mean, think about it. They launched it over George Papadopoulos, a guy that Donald Trump had met once. Did you even know him?
No.
Right.
I have no idea who he was.
Because he couldn't get anybody. No one really believed Trump was going to get the nomination. Then when he got it, he's not going to win. So there was no substantial people signing on to his foreign policy board. So in comes Papadopoulos. They met once. He has a conversation in a bar in the UK with a Australian ambassador who uses the contacts that he had in America to alert the FBI that, hey, you know what? Russia wants Hillary Clinton to lose this election. They offered to help Trump. And next thing you know, they launched this investigation into Carter Page, into Paul Manafort, into George Papadopoulos, and one other guy. So they're off and running. What he concludes, there never should have been a crossfire hurricane. That's what Peter Strzok named the probe that Andy McCabe told him to run.
And what we need to do is we need to hear from Biden on this. We need to hear from all the senior Democrats on this. This is not a partisan issue. If this can happen to a Republican candidate, it can happen to a Democrat candidate. And this is something the American people have lost trust. And every single person needs to see accountability from this. If Congress lets this go, if anybody lets this go, shame on them, because it's the beginning of corruption throughout all of our agencies if we don't hold somebody accountable.
It's nuts, I think. And if you factor in the fact that they're not pursuing anything with the Biden family and with Hunter Biden, 4-year probe into taxes and gun violations, should be 4 minutes. So I don't know how much you buy of this. But evidently, John Brennan, this is confirmed, walked into President Obama. I got to tell you something. Said Hillary Clinton, to get some pressure off her and the email scandal that she was using a private server to have her business of the country on it and everything that it contained. And when they hacked John Podesta's email, this was a big scandal. And then James Comey came out and said she's terrible things, but I'm not going to indict her. How do you get pressure off? She goes, I'm going to launch this. Russia is financing colluding with Trump to win the election. And she spends $20,000 to launch to get the Steele dossier and launch the operation to tar Trump. And John Brennan briefs Obama, so he hears about it. Why Trump, if you really thought Trump was being pursued by Russia, never got the defensive briefing to say, hey, listen, 4 of your guys are being investigated. We think there's links to Trump. Now, they briefed Hillary Clinton, but they didn't brief Trump. James Baker, the FBI former general counsel, evidently was told this by Durham about this whole briefing. He got emotional, left the room, came back and said, if I had known that Hillary Clinton was behind this, I never would have, he was accounts for the FBI, I never would have put this forward. Do you agree with you? Do you believe that?
Well, look, I think a lot of people have to answer questions. I think Hillary Clinton needs to answer. I think President Obama needs to answer. I think you need to go look at why did all of those people in that administration, why were they declassifying American names? Why were they spying on Americans during that time? Because it wasn't just Trump. It was multiple people. We know that. I know that the UN ambassador prior to me
Michael Flynn was the other
was opening up all of those things, looking at those different names. We need to go back to the prior administration before Trump and see whose hand was in this. This really is corruption. And it's corruption we can't have in America. We can't start going down that track.
Jake Sullivan's all over this story, and he's got this significant role as a foreign policy advisor.
No, this needs to be cleaned up. And it's the same thing with like what Biden's got away with their with 9 family members getting paid. You can't have these kinds of things happen. And no one touched the Democrats that are involved in this. And everybody go and do these fake things after Republicans. At some point, something's got to give.
Ambassador, do you believe that this is a Trump problem with the intelligence agencies, with the FBI, and with the Democrats? Or do you believe any Republican to emerge with the nomination has got to be ready for this type of offensive thrust from our own intelligence networks?
This is...
You think they'll come after you like this?
This is an American problem. And this is what I will do. As soon as I get elected, I'm going into every agency. We have to gut. We have to go and pull down anybody that was in any position of authority during any of this. Any of it. They're all tainted. They all have to come down. We've got to clean it up. We need to have a law enforcement agency that the American people can trust. We need to have a Department of Justice that we know will treat things fairly. And we need to pull out the political warfare that is happening in our agencies right now as we speak.
Mark Elias would not sit for an interview. Glenn Simpson, Andy McCabe, James Comey, William Preston, Priestap, and Rodney Jaffe. All major players would not sit down for Durham, but he still did a lot of things and put it forward. You know, the FBI said they made changes already. Do you agree?
I don't trust them. I mean, at this point, I don't care what changes you made until someone is held accountable. Congress needs to call every one of those people that refuse to be interviewed, and we need to make sure heads roll for this.
So a couple of things. And maybe this is too much of a leap. I think that Vladimir Putin is a modern-day Hitler, Stalin. No doubt about it. But he has been accused for manipulating an election and allowing Donald Trump to win an election. And every time Trump tried to reapproach, they would say, listen, this is more proof that him and Vladimir Putin had this special relationship. You saw this in a way I never could see it. So, I don't know. We have to be friends with our enemies. Saudi Arabia doesn't have a great government, but they were in many ways, they were allies. You go to walk up there, and people say, why is Nikki Haley talking to a Russian ambassador? What's going on there? I say, when they're in Helsinki, and I talked to Vladimir Putin, he said, I didn't do what they said you do. Do you realize that Donald Trump was actually telling the truth, and that Vladimir Putin might have been telling the truth about the election? I didn't do any of this stuff that they're accusing me of?
Worse than that, Brian. Putin was laughing at us. The Russians were laughing at us at all of this chaos that we had going on in America that they were involved in. There is nothing Russia loves more than chaos. And the fact that this chaos was happening, they were thrilled with it. China was thrilled with it because guess what? America was distracted. And that's exactly what they want every day. And we fell right into that trap because of political motivations of some Democrat operatives.
Were there things that you could have dealt with Russia on that you really couldn't because of what was happening at the White House?
The problem was there was total distrust. There was distrust of what's real, what's not real. You know, I remember having a conversation with President Trump after he had that press conference, and the things he was saying, he looked way too cozy with Putin. And I'm like, what are you doing when you know that people are distrustful about what's happening here? You know, we've got to make sure that we're conscious about what they're doing. We didn't know what the Russians were capable of. We didn't know what they were going to do. And you look at the fact President Trump never got a moment's peace. But every one of us that were cabinet members, neither did we.
Right.
Because every day, if we weren't answering it domestically from the media, we were having to answer it, in my case, from a foreign policy lens from all the ambassadors on the Security Council that wanted to know what was going on and did Russia really do it and what were we doing about it and was President Trump going to go to jail? It was endless.
Do you remember he had the meeting with the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un? And as they're flying back, they probably made some gains, and they walked away from one deal, and the other time was the first time they met. And right away, Donald Trump Jr. had this meeting with this Russian official, was trying to get him to get rid of the Magnitsky Act. That ended up being the number one story. I go, wait a second. He just went and met with our number one enemy. We're starting to make possibly some inroads, but certainly a lot to talk about. But that was not it. You guys do the Abraham Accords. You move the embassy. No one's talking about these historic moments. Something emerged from the Russia probe. It's bizarre to get your head around knowing it's a colossal waste of time now. You must be frustrated listening to this.
Can we now put that same energy into why Biden had 9 family members paid, on what Biden's doing with China, on what Biden was doing with Romania? Can we now start that? Because up until now, they wanted to talk about Trump and Russia. Well, you know what? Now we need to talk about what we know exists. We saw money change hands. What was the business that they did? What did the Biden family do that caused that money to go to nieces and nephews and daughter-in-laws?
Well, what is his business?
It's exactly right.
His
what
business,
is the
his
business?
influence, is influence. He can
So,
move the levers of government.
I want them to go after Biden as much as they attempted to go after Trump over something that was false. This is something we know is real. We've seen the money change bank accounts. Why don't we now go after that? There's a lot of distrust the American people have, and there's a lot that our agencies and our elected officials have to do to make it right to the American people.
One thing I think is pretty clear for your career. So you run a state, a complicated state at a time, and do some controversial things at the time, taking down the Confederate flag, and you have some shootings where you're with President Obama on that, so you can go across the aisle. But looking back, I think one of the most important things you did is take that job. Or, they was offered to you and you took it. And the other smart thing you did is say, I'll take it if I can report directly to you, Mr. President. And it turns out if you read your book, there were a lot of people that wanted to make sure you weren't successful within the Trump world.
Right.
That was the 2 smartest thing you did. No longer can they say, well, she knows it domestically but not internationally. That was the rap on George W. Bush. But in retrospect, looking back, is that how you feel?
Well, it's the reason I said it had to be a cabinet position. I needed to be on the National Security Council, and I wasn't going to be a talking head or a wallflower. That's what I told him. President Trump was true to his word.
It was almost like you were Secretary of State more than an ambassador.
The United Nations, when you're dealing with 193 countries, I knew to be effective, I didn't need to run through a middleman to get things done. I needed to be able to pick up the phone and tell President Trump, look, I think I can do this negotiation. Are you okay with it? And he'd say, run with it. It was trust between the two of us, but it was the fact that you're dealing with 193 countries. You don't have time to waste to get things done. When you're dealing with missile strikes from North Korea, when you're dealing with an Iran deal you're trying to get of, when you're dealing with the fact that we were moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and the whole world was condemning us, you have to be able to act in real time. And that's the reason I asked for it. I know others didn't like that I did it, but I got the job done and I got the kick me sign off of our backs.
And I guess you realize more than anybody else, too, you got to delegate. I mean, we're losing Africa to China. We're losing Central and South America to China. Now, you could say, why isn't Joe Biden on the phone? Well, that's why he's got a State Department, too. And there's a lot of people who should be out there going to the Congo, going to Nigeria, meeting with them. Hey, I know the Chinese were just here, but let me give you an idea of what's going on. And then you have a direct line to Blinken, and Blinken's able to get – there's none of that going on. There's no flow chart in an administration that prided itself on experience and normalcy.
And there were times where I'd have to go meet with the Turkish ambassador and say, why are you getting Russian missiles? What can we do to make that stop? Or, you're talking with corrupt
missile defense,
especially a time where we're now seeing deals done that aren't using the American dollar, which is a national security threat. Those are conversations I would have had saying, we can't do this if you're going to go and do something other than the U.S. currency. Those conversations aren't happening. Those negotiations aren't happening.
Like, why isn't there pressure in Argentina and Brazil? What the hell are you doing?
Right.
We just had the Brazilian leader here about a month ago. Why is he going to China afterwards and saying, I think I'll go with your currency? Ambassador Nikki Haley running for president of the United States, working hard in Iowa and New Hampshire especially. A few more minutes with the governor in just a moment. Governor Nikki Haley in studio with a few more minutes now, going back to Iowa and New Hampshire. Of course, if you want to know more, pick up a book if you want something done. Leadership lessons from a bold woman. for both women. Governor, great to see you. So you were out first. You've been working hard. Tell me what it's like on the ground in Iowa, New Hampshire.
We are there every few weeks. We're not doing any shortcuts. We do town halls. We've still got hundreds of people attending our town halls and asking every question. We're shaking every hand. And recently in New Hampshire, the headline was Nikki Haley's campaigning the New Hampshire way, and they expect that. And so, what you hear is they care about the debt. They care about inflation. They care about illegal immigration and what's happening on the border. They care about crime. They care about transparency in the classroom and how parents don't know what's happening to their kids. Americans are nervous, but they're also tired. They're ready to start seeing America strong again. They're ready to start seeing America proud again. And so, we've touched every hand and we're going to keep on doing it. We're headed to Iowa this week. We're headed to New Hampshire again next week.
Is it frustrating for you to work this hard and see Donald Trump with a 20-point lead on DeSantis and DeSantis with maybe a 15-point lead on you?
Not at all. If you go to 2016, Ted Cruz in July, which we're not there yet, had 4%. In November, he had 10%. He ended up winning it in January with 28%. You have Scott Walker. He was above 20% at this time. He never made it to Iowa. It's early. This is about, you're going to see some ups and downs along the way. And to me, it's about doing the hard work, talking to as many people as you can, and getting why I think we need a new generational leader, and the fact that I've got executive experience being a governor and foreign policy experience being at the UN, and I've got a lot to offer, and we're telling people
A few things going to change. Tim Scott's going to be in May 22nd, then Mike Pence is going to be in. He's going to start a super PAC. Do you think that'll be it?
I think so.
And then Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, I think after those three are in, it's hard to get to do anything past, the middle of June. I mean, there's a lot of ground game you've got to cover. There's a lot of fundraising to get on the debate stage. You have to have a certain
Do you know the criteria yet?
I don't. My guess is it's going to be you have to be above like 1%. I'm guessing you have to have more than 40,000 donations. We, in our first 6 weeks, we raised over $11 million. We had 70,000 donations from all 50 states. 67,000 of those were less than $200. You got to do a lot to get to that point. And so I think anybody getting in, after mid-June, it's really going to be tough.
Right. I think everyone agrees with that just because of the way everything is right now. Is it, how do you explain your relationship with President Trump? He has not attacked you.
Well, look, we're friends. We had a great working relationship. I called him before I ran to let him know that, one, I appreciate him giving me the job, but two, I was in it to win it, and that I think we need a new generation. We got to leave the negativity and baggage behind, and we've got a country to save. And so he knows what I'm doing. He knows what I'm capable of. I mean, the reason I got out of there without a tweet is because I told him the truth. When he was doing something right, I fought for him. I support him. When he was doing something wrong, I gave him options and said we could do this differently, and we worked very well together.
Well, yeah, as soon as you get close, it's got to change, but you're ready for that, and you'll go back and forth.
He knows if he kicks, I kick back harder.
Governor, if people want to support you, where do they go?
Go to NikkiHaley.com. Come to one of our town halls in New Hampshire and Iowa. They're in the next couple of weeks. We're going to keep hitting the trail. We're looking forward to winning, and we're going to see this through.
Nikki Haley, thanks so much.
Thanks so much.